Welcome to my second video looking at building the crew figures for the vignette, our Salvaging the Hotchkiss from the Renault FT17 Renault. Now, I could have used commercial figures for this. There are not a lot. I think Meng makes a crew for that's suitable for World War One and World War Two French armored crew. There's not a lot of difference between World War Two and World War One armored crew. They basically kept the same uniform and kit from the First World War into the Second World War, at least up until the Battle of France. And you could use the Meng crew that is out there. I think also Mini Art might also produce a French crew that might be suitable as well. But I wanted to make my own, and I had a very specific concept of this vignette. The two crewmen pulling their Hotchkiss machine gun out of the turret of the vehicle, which was a standard practice among crews. They were trained to do that when the vehicle broke down and needed to be abandoned. It was their standard practice to pull the weapon. That weapon could either be the Hotchkiss or it could be I think it's a 2 or 3 inch gun. I can't remember exactly. Out of the turret. I presume, not being able to get any photos of the interior of a turret that was suitable as reference, but I presume this was done with a locking mechanism and it just unlocked and you whipped the weapon out. So that's what we're doing. I'm using Tamiya putty in this particular case to make these figures. Usually, this is not my putty of choice. Usually I would use milliput rather than Tamiya putty. I do use Tamiya putty, but I use it usually for smaller jobs than this. So this is a bit of an experiment. I tend to feel that I would actually go back and use milliput in the future or some other suitable putty rather than the Tamiya for a whole figure in the future. But it was an experiment to do this. My complaint with the Tamiya was, I think, just a little bit. I just didn't feel comfortable with the texture and the setting time. Compared to some of the other putties that I would usually work with, which either set really fast or set very slowly, etc. Yeah, as you can see, I started with a soft wire frame and work my way through there, and it's quite a lot of fun to make figures like this. Although I don't usually like making 1/35th scale figures. I tend to prefer larger figures if I'm making figures completely from scratch like this. Anyway, you can see that the poses are quite complex, and look, if I could have scratch built these from kit parts, etc., but it'd be quite complicated to do so. I'd have ended up doing a lot of reworking of commercial figures to do that, so it just made quite a lot of sense in this particular case, given what I wanted them to do, and I just didn't want them to be standing next to the vehicle or something like that. I wanted something dynamic that tells a story as part of the composition. And I think that's quite important in modeling, that you actually have an idea of story rather than just sticking people all over a vehicle or next to an artillery piece or something like that. Um, I wanted a bit of story, and in this particular case, as I was reading through references about the FT17 and it, this reference that they would remove the weaponry before abandoning the vehicle came up, and I thought, wow, well that could be the story here that they're doing that. So that's what we've gone for, and yeah, like I said, I think it would have been difficult to have done this with commercial figures. Um, and yeah, it's just the trick is to get good faces, etc., which I think I achieved here with these figures. I quite like them. I'm not sure if they're photographed very well, but I, I quite like my result with these figures. So my first idea with these guys was to go with riding pants and leggings. There seemed to be quite a lot of photos of French crews wearing these. Some of these fellows would have been probably converted from cavalry units, I'm guessing. Uh, I didn't do an enormous amount of research into um, the the nature of French army uh, tank formations during the First World War, but I would imagine that many of them were converted over from cavalry units, just as they were in other armies. Um, and you tend to see what looks like a combination of cavalry clothing and other clothing that's improvised, like the leather jacket. And the leather jacket, in my view, I think it looks like what they wore for a leather jacket was quite arbitrary, and they were probably personally told to obtain a leather jacket that was of a reasonably similar pattern. I would guess something like that. Although maybe perhaps the army was supplying these jackets, but they're not. If you look through photos, you see quite a lot of variance in their appearance and kit. They seem to have a combination of the normal kit that any French soldier has, plus these jackets, and a modified Adrian helmet sometimes comes up, and I went for putting modified Adrian helmets on them. They seem to have cut away the front of the helmet in many units and replaced it with a piece of leather instead. There maybe, presumably, that was because they found the normal Adrian helmet to be a little bit large or something like that within the confines of a small space, and the Renault FT17 was certainly a small space. You can find a very good video um, where I think the chieftain gets into one of these things, and or it may be actually the M1935 vehicle, but it's very similar in dimensions anyway, and they're tiny. They're absolutely tiny, especially the turret space. The driver was a little bit better off, but especially the turret space was very tiny, just enough room for your shoulders, and whatever gun was installed in the turret. I would not, you wouldn't like to have probably cruised around in one of these things, although they didn't very much cruise, they walked. It moved at a fast walking pace, basically. But yes, they seem to all wear a leather jacket. There's a prescribed face protection that seems to be common as well, which incorporated goggles and some chain mail to cover the face. Yeah, basically, I think the idea of the leather jacket was to give you some protection against spooling when this was hit. And look, the armor on these vehicles would not have stopped much. Large caliber bullets would have probably penetrated these vehicles, or certainly created spooling on the inside. A machine gun blast would have probably, even from an 8mm Maxim gun, would have created spooling, and hence the gloves and leather jackets being essential to give you some sort of protection. But anyway, there you go. You can see the figures, and you'll also notice that later on in the build, I changed my mind and decided to put trousers on them, which were quite common, again, in the photos. And I think they actually came out better for that. As much as I'd done very nice work on the leggings and riding pants, giving them trousers actually, I felt in the end that it actually lent a little bit more atmosphere. So there you are. This is the crew. So photos, of course, at the end of this video, as to everything put together and how they've come out. I'm quite happy with them, and I think you can see that very clearly what they're doing in relationship to each other, which is very important in compositional terms. So better photos and everything at the end here. And thank you for supporting the channel. I hope this improves as I go along. And yeah, thank you for watching.